Robert Plank Show, episode 308. How to quit your 9 to 5, motivate yourself, experience the entrepreneur lifestyle, and take action with Ryan Grant. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the show. Our guest today is Ryan Grant, who quit his job as an accountant paying over $50,000 per year to pursue selling online full-time. Less than 4 years later, Ryan now runs a business doing 7 figures in sales and has a team in place to keep everything running smoothly. So Mr. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Robert. Glad to be here.
I'm glad that you're here. And I'm looking at your website now, onlinesellingexperiment.com. So is this like your main focus? Is this your main website?
So that is one of our websites. That one is more to document the things that we're actually doing in the business that we run. So it's kind of a side project in a way, or it's a side project that turned into more of a business. But that site documents a lot of what we do. So we do an online retail business where we sell a lot of physical products through websites like Amazon.com, Jet.com, eBay.com. We do some through our own website. And then the Online Selling Experiment website was to document how some of those things go, and then also to share some financial results from transitioning from a full-time job to becoming a full-time online seller. So it's kind of a component of everything, but it's not the only site or the only place or thing that we have going on.
Awesome. But you're putting in the work anyway. Might as well write it down, right?
Absolutely.
Cool. So I mean, what is your primary focus in your business then?
Yeah, so our biggest focus at the moment is using Amazon and selling on Amazon, and particularly using the Fulfillment by Amazon program. So we will purchase products via a variety of sourcing methods, everything from retail arbitrage, which is buying items in stores like big box stores such as Walmart, Target, purchasing items at a discount and then turning around and selling those online. We'll do purchasing what we consider wholesale, which is purchasing products directly from brands and manufacturers, and then we sell their brands on Amazon. And then we do a little bit of our own brands on Amazon too. So we'll import products from China or other overseas countries and then put our own brand name on it and then turn around and sell those products on Amazon. So we source via a variety of different methods, and we've built up to being able to use all these methods over time. And then we sell those products on primarily Amazon, eBay, and Jet.com. Those are our three biggest channels at the moment.
Cool. So retail arbitrage, wholesaling, and then getting your own brand sourced. And so, I mean, what sort of industries and what sort of products, or is that a secret?
No, I mean, that's we do products across all different types. We're focused mostly on what products the numbers make sense. So we kind of take a data-driven approach to things. So we're not as concerned with what the actual product is so much as what we can sell it for, what the perceived demand is. So we sell everything from apparel to household items, toys and games, home improvement type items. We're really all across the board. And as long as the numbers make sense, we will sell in those categories.
Awesome. I mean, pretty good way of going about it, right? You're just kind of like doing different tests, and if the numbers say to do less of that, do more of that, then that's the direction you go.
Exactly. We let the numbers be our guide.
Cool. So now that we kind of have a handle on what's making you money right now and what your business is, I'm curious about this whole transitioning thing that we mentioned in your bio, and that you mentioned a couple of minutes ago about how you were a full-time accountant, and then you realized that like things had to change and stuff like that. So I mean, what happened? When did this whole process start for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say it began probably sometime in college, maybe even before. I knew I'd always wanted to have my own business, and that'd been a goal of mine for a long time. And then I really realized how bad I wanted that shortly after getting a job as an accountant and working for someone else. I realized that wasn't the path that I wanted to be on, wasn't what I wanted to be doing with my time and with my life. So I began working as an accountant in about January of 2012, and I would say I knew that I wanted to leave that job within probably the first 6 months that I was there. So I didn't do it. I didn't leave right away, but I knew that I could get some things in place to make the transition easier and get some things in place to make sure that I had income coming in before I actually quit. So I began kind of planning to leave probably 6 months in. That's when I kind of made up my mind that this was going to be a temporary thing for me. And then I ended up quitting my full-time job in September of 2013. So a little after a year after I made the decision, I made sure I was producing some income and tested out some different business things to make sure that I could produce money and wouldn't be ending up back at my parents' house or anything like that. But yeah, September of 2013 is when I finally pulled the trigger. Felt like I had the right pieces in place to be able to give it a good shot, and I haven't looked back so far.
Awesome stuff. So about 18 months from making the decision to or no, I guess six months to decide, and then about 12 more months to actually to make the jump. And so I'm sort of curious. So once you kind of had your mind made up and you said, all right, I'm not going to quit right away, which by the way is really cool because I kind of went through something similar about a decade ago where I also wanted to go full time, and a lot of people just said, "Oh, just quit right away." And I was like, "Well, I will, but let me kind of get my ducks in a row first, like you said, so you don't end up back at the parents' house." So when you
Right.
decided, "All right, I'm going to make the jump," like what sort of lists did you make, or what kind of like criteria did you say you had to have in place before actually doing it?
Yeah, so one of the big things I wanted to do prior to quitting the job was I wanted to buy an owner-occupied duplex prior to quitting so that I would be able to live in half and then rent out the other half to keep my living expenses low. And I wanted to do that while I still had the W-2 income from that job. So that was one thing that I wanted to make sure I had, and I did end up doing that. And then another big thing was just I wanted to be making between about $500 and $1,000 per month at an absolute minimum, putting in 10 hours per week. Because if I knew if I could do that in 10 hours per week, once I could scale up to dedicating all my time to that, that there was a very high probability that I would be able to 4x that or more by dedicating full-time hours to it. So then I was real close to $1,000 a month in profit from selling online when I did quit my job. So I was confident that I would be able to at least 4x that dedicating full-time hours. And then the other big thing from just working an additional year was saving up additional money to be able to give myself a bit of a safety net and make it so that I would have significant runway to be able to run this through, both to have money to put into the business and then also to fund my living expenses too. So in that year between when I kind of decided that I would quit and when I actually did, I made sure that I was saving as much as I could. I was keeping my expenses low and all basically planning up to the point of making sure that when I did quit my job, I was giving myself the absolute best chance of success for that day going forward.
Awesome. I mean, it sounds like you had a lot of bases covered there. Like as far as the $500 to $1,000 a month income with only 10 hours, so that way you knew that worst case scenario, you could 4x your income. You had multiple streams of income, like living and renting out parts of that duplex, and then having that cushion or that runway. And that duplex thing in particular, like I'm really curious about that because I bought a house. I think about a house about maybe 9 months before I quit, and kind of like same mentality as you. I was like, well, I want to have the more like provable income, the more like income that like the banks and stuff understand. But
Right.
I straight up just like bought a house, and I didn't buy too big or too small of a house. But sometimes I think back and I think like, man, I kind of wish I'd bought like a multi-family kind of thing and just lived in one of the units or something. But then when I think about it, I'm like, I don't know though, because what if like someone's real loud in the other one or smoking in the other unit? So has it been like an okay experience with living in that duplex, or are you still living there, or like what happened with that aspect?
Yeah, it's actually worked out really well. I do still live there today. So I purchased it in March of 2013, moved in June of 2013. So I've been here for almost 4 years now. And so far I've been pretty fortunate. There were tenants in the building when or there were tenants in one unit when I purchased it. So I had rent coming in from day one. And then I've been pretty fortunate. There hasn't been a lot of issues with the tenants. I probably average getting a call with some sort of issue maybe once once every 6 months or so. It's been really infrequent. I haven't had any of the 5 p.m. calls on a Friday saying that they need a plummet. There's a plumbing issue or the toilet's leaking. Nothing like that. So it's been really good. And the rent from the other unit, in addition to I have a roommate in my unit who pays rent as well. So the combination of those that rental income more than pays the mortgage for the bank. So if essentially I'm getting paid to live in this house and I'm paying off the principal, and buying in September of 2013 happened to be a decent time to buy, and now I have some additional equity in the house as well. So that's played out extremely well for me, and particularly for people that are young and single. I think buying a duplex as the first property makes a lot of sense in many cases, as opposed to like a single family house, to be able to get some income coming in, and just being an owner occupant where you're in the building, your renters know that too. So if you do have to, when you're looking for new tenants and things like that, you're going to screen out some people who know that the owner's not going to put up with stuff. And I think you get a little bit higher quality of tenant too. So all in all, it's played out extremely well, and I've been really happy that I purchased it.
Awesome. Yeah, it sounds like it, and in a lot of ways, I'm super jealous. But it's cool that that's worked out. So you did the duplex thing, you saved the money, you had the target amount of income, and then like, did you have a target date to quit, or did it just get to a certain point where you were like really fed up with a job, or like how did you finally get to that point where you finally had your quitting day, where it was time to make the leap?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say I probably had that date set. I probably decided on it about 2 months beforehand. One of the big things that I wanted to do is I wanted to leave the job that I was leaving on a good terms too. And in the accounting world, January through mid-April is an extremely busy time of the year, and it's not really fair to the employer to leave the job during that timeline. So I wanted to make sure I was leaving at least a few months in advance of that. And I just, I don't know. I moved into duplex in June, and then once I had that in place, I was like, okay, probably a few months from now would make sense, and then mapped out a few. I don't know. So it was a little bit more art than science, but I knew I wanted to do it after I moved into the duplex and at least a few months before January. So September 20th was the day, and it just happened to feel right, I guess.
Awesome, and that's almost right around my birthday, and so a lot of
Nice.
things. Yeah, yep. So it all worked out cosmically or whatever, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
a lot of things about that made sense. Like number one, you didn't just do it all in like a month or a week. You kind of did those baby steps, right? You did the move
Hmm.
first, and then you did the job thing, and then what was also cool is it was like sort of that timing thing, and I can relate to that a little bit because I'm a computer programmer, and I would have
Hmm.
these like sort of 3 to 6 month projects. And it
Yep.
was kind of similar to me, where I was like, okay, this one project finished, this other project, in a few weeks is going to start up soon, and it would be kind of a jerk thing to do if I were to quit, midstream in the middle of a project. So I kind of had this sort of feeling like it's now or never, kind of similar to you, like the timing is good now, and it won't be good in 6 months or in 9 months. So like, what the heck are we waiting for? And so you made that
Hmm.
jump, and then so September 2013, and so I mean, what was that first like 6 months or a year or so for you like? And did you like have any sort of difficulty adjusting or any kind of challenges?
Yeah, I mean, the first right away, it was just I felt a lot of freedom, and just being in control of my own schedule was a very freeing experience and was overall good. Some of the biggest, like the first year, I was working mainly with myself. I didn't have very many team members at that point, and it was mainly me working from my house. So there's definitely challenges. I mean, the only person to keep you motivated and to keep you going is yourself. So that was at times a challenge to make yourself actually get up and do the work. One other thing was just you're not interacting with as many people, especially with an online business. So you don't have the camaraderie of coworkers or having people around. So that was definitely a change and an adjustment for that first year. And then you just don't know exactly what you're doing. That's kind of you're learning every day, so that can be a little bit unsettling at times. So those were a few of the the potential challenges. But all in all, it was, I think just the feeling of freedom kind of overshadowed all of those potential challenges and negatives. And whenever I was at a time of maybe low motivation, I just thought, do I want to go back to the job that I had previously? And the answer was always no. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to get up and I'm going to make this work because I don't want to go back to doing that. And I liked what I was doing. Even in that first 6 to 12 months, I liked that much better than my prior job. So just the thought of going back to the job that I didn't really like was enough to keep me motivated. So those are a few thoughts there.
Awesome, and they're good thoughts, and I like sort of your mindset there. In that your primary motivator was to kind of not backslide in the 9 to 5 and be stuck where a lot of other people are, and that was kind of. I mean, it took me. I think I was with a day job about 3 years. And maybe the past year or so is when I was kind of transitioning out. And I mean, I'm really glad for those few years just because, like, so similar to you, like, I didn't have the worst job, but it just kind of, it wasn't for me. And
Right.
a lot of other people who maybe, who just, like, started internet marketing without getting the job or who maybe were, like, laid off, they couldn't really relate because I was like, well, number one, I kind of chose to quit this job. And then number two, like, I tried it. I gave it a go. And then I
Mhm.
realized it wasn't for me, and then I kind of was able to build like that library in my head of like all the things I didn't like on some days, didn't like getting up early, didn't like this or that coworker, didn't like having to do with that project. And so yeah, I can relate to that too. This that whole like going through the day job to know what the alternative is and to know like that's a thing that I don't really want to get back to. And so that was a big motivator for you, it sounds like. And then something else that you mentioned a little bit there was that there was sort of that aspect of, well, you're going to have less social interactions, you're going to have less
Mhm.
friends, more of like being by yourself. So how did you overcome that part of it?
Yeah, that one kind of just with time. You adjust to it, and then I forced myself to get out of the house more. So I'd make sure I was going to the gym and playing basketball, things like that. I would go to certain networking events locally to try to interact with other business owners, and then making sure that I was reaching out to friends and family to meet up with them and do things with them. So it just took a little bit of time to kind of make sure I was getting those things in place on a regular basis. And I think for that particular issue, it's going to be a little bit different for every person, especially depending on how much social interaction you're looking for on a daily basis. But those were a few things I did. And then once I got team members in place, then I had people working with me in the business every day. And then that kind of helped to fill that void, if you will, too.
Awesome. So that's all really good advice. To that, first of all, you kind of made more of an effort to get yourself out there, knowing that if you don't, you're really going to be boxed in, and then having those team members built up over time, so that now you have kind of those people that are in it with you that you can relate. And so I'm really curious about that part. And so those years between say like 2014 and 2017, as you were like building things and progressing along, like how did your business evolve? Like all the things you mentioned about FBA, like did you start with all those, or did it take a while to get dialed in, or like what was that sort of part of the journey like for you?
Yeah, so right away, in those initial years, we were focused almost exclusively on retail arbitrage. That was really the main sourcing method that we were using for our inventory. And from there, we've added over time. But the goal now, and this has kind of come from learning experience, is to fully systematize things before adding something new. Because there was a time early on where we tried to do retail arbitrage, we would try to do the wholesale sourcing direct from companies, and we would try the importing or private label, whatever you want to call it. We would try to do all those at the same time, and then they would end up suffering. So learning from that experience, now we made sure that things were systematized. So we got the retail arbitrage side of things systematized, and then we began to add wholesale sourcing, and then now we've got some pretty good systems in place for that. Probably mid 2016 is when we got some good systems in place there. The retail arbitrage systems have been in place for at least since the beginning of 2015, where we have people that go out and purchase those products for us, and it doesn't really take any of my time. And then the wholesale was at the same spot about a year and a half later. And then at the beginning of 2017 is when we really got started again with the importing or private label type sourcing, where we're branding our own products from overseas. So it's been a gradual progression. We retail was first, and then wholesale, and then now we're into the importing and private label, and we've made sure that we haven't left anything behind too. So like the retail and wholesale are continuing to provide results for the business, but they don't really take any time away from like what I'm doing and what the operations manager from the business, what he's doing either. He keeps those things running, but we systematize and then kind of move on and add something new as well.
Awesome, and that's really, I mean, that's huge advice right there. And I mean, I'm writing that down, and I hope everyone else listening writes that down to systematize before you build something else onto the business. Because I mean, like we all kind of have those stages in our business where like we try things and things kind of don't work. There's that phase, and then we kind of get things working, and then you want to expand. And I think like if we just try to kind of blindly expand, it'll end up just being this huge thing that takes all this time. And because you systematize before adding on, then that enabled you to, as you said, not leave that income behind. Because if you weren't careful, you could have like built up 20-30 grand a month in the retail arbitrage. Then when it comes time to move into wholesaling, you could have let the retail arbitrage kind of sit by the wayside. But instead, you made that system so that way you can kind of ramp up and things get easier, and you can just kind of pick up more and more speed. And so that whole like systems thinking, I mean, is that from your like your accounting financial background, or did that kind of come about with trial and error, or like where did that come from?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say it's a combination. The accounting and financial background, I'm sure, helps, and then just the experience too, because most people, at least I'll speak for myself. I tend to bite off more than I can chew, at least initially. Like I want to do all these different things, and I want to do them all now. And then I've taken that approach and found out that that doesn't actually lead to results in very many places. It leads to doing a bunch of things at a fairly low level. So having that experience where you're doing something right, you add something else, and then both things suffer, that really makes you take a step back and think, okay, maybe I should have fully systematized this first thing before I move on to something new. And it's a kind of an ongoing challenge, because there's always another opportunity. There's always something else out there that you're like, oh, that'd be fun to try. And just having those experiences where you've done those things and it doesn't play out extremely well helps you to make sure that you systematize before moving on in the future. And it's still a challenge, because there's always those new and exciting things. But I would say just the experience of having seen things suffer from taking on too many different projects at the same time is probably the biggest thing that's made me be systems focused going forward.
Awesome, and that is killer advice. And I think that all of us entrepreneurs can relate to that, and we've probably seen all kinds of people do that, where like they're always chasing those bright shiny objects, and that leads to just kind of always switching gears all the time and not really making any progress. And I mean, I've seen some people kind of be stuck in that pattern for years and years, just like always tired, always chasing something, not really making any money. And so it sounds like you have that sort of self-reflection of like you've kind of been in that mode for a short time, and you said, okay, this is not where I want to be. Something has to change, and then that led to like the systems and the scaling and all, and looking at the numbers and all that kind of cool stuff. And so I don't want to keep you for too long, but we've been talking about this Amazon company that you built, and sort of your transition from a day job to this full-time entrepreneurship thing. And so do you have any advice out there for the people out there listening who kind of want to make the leap that you and I have made? Any like sort of like number one top advice for someone like that?
Yeah, I think the number one thing I would say is find a business opportunity that sounds interesting to you, and then give it a shot. I think that's kind of the easiest way to go. And if that business opportunity that you're interested in, or that sounds interesting to you, is selling on Amazon and using the Fulfillment by Amazon program, what I would encourage you to do is sign up for an Amazon seller account, and then you can download an app called the Amazon Seller app. It's completely free. And then with that app, you have basically a barcode scanner option within there. You can use that to scan the UPC or the barcode on any product. So I would use that app in a retail store, looking for items on clearance, and then use the app and let it tell you what the profit potential of those items are, and then I would see if you can invest 50 or $100 in inventory, whatever you're comfortable with, and then just give it a shot and see what happens. And I can put together a page just for you, Robert, and with some tips for how people can just get started. There won't be any opt-in required or anything like that. It's just some information on how people could get started with an Amazon FBA business. And I'll put that at onlinesellingexperiment.com/Robert. And then no opt-in required, just info on getting started. But the number one thing I would encourage people to do is get action, or not get action, but take action. And just see what's possible, because ideas are only worth something once they're executed upon, and you won't really know what you're capable of or what's possible until you try it.
Awesome. And there's so many good things I like about that piece of advice. I mean, number one, that it's something actual, concrete, like get that Amazon seller app, go into a store, scan some barcodes, spend $50 to $100. There's real steps to be taken there and actual numbers to hit there. And the other thing I like about that is that there's always sort of that advice of like, well, if you've always been thinking about buying a Corvette, like take that first step, like get the brochure on a Corvette. Or if you've always thought about, going back to school, then research a couple of schools. Like there's something to like just taking that little bit of action. And I think that a lot of people out there, they have these dreams, but they haven't even taken like half of a step to even get there. So I really like that advice there to get that Amazon seller app, go to a retail store and scan stuff until you find some sort of inventory. That way you can kind of get that sort of bits of inspiration and get a little momentum and put a little money in the game and sort of figure out if this entrepreneur stuff is right for you. And to get those money making tips, everyone should go right now to onlinesellingexperiment.com/Robert. And so is that the only place people should go? Like after listening to today's call, do you want people to check out any other websites, or is that page the place to be?
That's really the place to be. That's kind of the hub of where I am sharing information. There's links on there to like the YouTube channel, different social medias and things like that. But that's really the hub and the best place to find me.
All right, cool. Then if that's the best place, then that's where everyone should go. So once again, to make sure everyone has that URL, that is onlinesellingexperiment.com/Robert. So lots of good stuff today. I hope everyone listens 2, 3, 5, maybe even 10 times to hear about Mr. Ryan and sort of his mindset when he was in a job and wanted to go full time, as well as some of those things that he did to ramp it up, to scale, to try out different sort of marketing experiments, and then pursue those avenues that worked for him. So onlinesellingexperiment.com/Robert. And thanks so much, Mr. Ryan Grant, for stopping by the show and sharing what you had to share with us today.
Thanks for having me, Robert. It's been fun.
Please take a second to rate and subscribe to The Robert Plank Show in the iTunes Store. It's free. robertplank.com/iTunes.